Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Dress and Drinks. I'm Leon Wiebers. I'm professor of costume design at Loyola Marymount University and president of Costume Society of America. I'm so happy that you are joining us today for our webinar series, Dress and Drinks. Today, we will be discussing some fabulous things with people from the Mint Museum. If you have general questions regarding CSA's digital content or our webinar series, Conversations on Dress, please contact conversationsondress at costumesocietyamerica.com. With that, I'm so excited. First, I will introduce our guest. Annie Carlano is passionate about textiles, fashion, and design. Carlano is an art historian and curator with experience in museums and universities across the US and Europe. She began her career at the Musée delle Argentine in Florence and studied historic textiles at the V&A Museum and Archives in Europe. Now the senior curator of craft, design, and fashion at the Mint Museum in Charlotte, Carlano has taught at FIT, Parsons Paris, and lectures widely. Her recent publications include Fashion Reimagined and Craft Across Continents. Her current interests include Cuba textiles, modernism, and sustainable fashion. She is an ICOM member and a member of ICOM International Committee for Costume. After we speak with Annie for a brief moment, we will also then have the Mint Museum's fashion fellow, Bridget Kerr. This month, we find her willingly and happily in the crystal clutches of legendary handbag designer Judith Leiber. Kerr, the Mint Museum's fashion fellow in Charlotte, North Carolina, is researching Leiber's craftsmanship and career, leading to the museum's fall 2026 exhibition dedicated to her. The museum's generous donations of Leiber designs highlights handbags as both function and fashionable art. She's passionate about how accessories contribute to dress and how they are an integral part of fashion history. These purses are works of art unto themselves, and though Leiber never considered herself an artist but an artisan, and as many dress historians will relate to, is hopeful this exhibition will help visitors consider the fashion objects are worthwhile of being on display in a museum, just as meaningful as other diverse works of art in a collection. Her BAs in French and Theater from Skidmore College, and MA in Fashion and Textile Studies, History, Theory, and Museum Practice from FIT, and experience working for an antique dealer. Bridget is particularly knowledgeable for someone early in her career. We can't wait to hear more. She loves the connections made in merging historical research with the physical object in front of you and communicating the construction and labor behind a piece. With that, welcome both Annie and Bridget to Dress and Drinks.
Thank you, Leon. It's a joy to be here.
So excited. I cannot wait.
Thank you for inviting the Mint Museum to be a part of this illustrious program. And we are focused on Bridget's research tonight, but I thought I would speak a little bit about the Mint Museum. For those in the audience who may not be familiar with our museum, it was the first art museum in North Carolina. It was established in 1936. And you might wonder, why is it called the Mint Museum? I'm often asked, is it spearmint or peppermint? And it is neither. It was named for the U.S. Mint. The original building was the U.S. Mint in the center of Charlotte. The Mint Museum today is one museum with two locations. On the left-hand side, you can see the Mint Uptown, which is where we house the Mint Museum of Craft and Design, as well as modern and contemporary art. And on the right-hand side, you can see Mint Randolph, our country estate. It's in a big park. It houses the fashion collection, as well as the historic ancient Americas, Native American, and the decorative arts collections. And for those of you, again, who are less familiar with the Mint, it is best known locally, nationally, internationally for fashion, craft, design, and the decorative arts. Fashion is the largest collection within this bundle of what we could call applied arts. And it numbers at this moment almost 10,000 objects.
Wow.
And the most recent gift to the collection was sort of neck and neck with a commission for a Dior gown from Maria Grazia Curie, was the gift of the Leiber bags. And that's a great segue onto Bridget's talk, because she was hired as a fashion fellow to lead this project that she's now going to tell you all about. But before she does that, just to talk a little bit about recent exhibitions of fashion at the Mint Museum. A few years ago, we were a venue for the Anna Sui exhibition. We gave it our own spin. Anna Sui said it was the best interpretation of her work. And then just 2 years ago, on the right-hand side, Fashion Reimagined, which was an exhibition, highlights of our collection from 1760 to now. And then before Bridget starts her talk, I just want to invite you all to come to the Mint Museum.
So awesome. Thank you, Annie. We'll see you at the end again, I think. Bridget,
Thanks, Annie.
hi. Tell us
Hi.
more.
Well, lucky me. I mean, I feel like I walked into just about a dream job, almost straight out of graduate school. I love this work. I love getting to, study one designer and work with truly a trove of incredible objects every single day. And so I, just about feel like the luckiest girl in the world, quite frankly.
That's fantastic. I mean, how many handbags, purses, clutches came in this donation?
So it was a donation of about 130 objects, and of that, about 85 of them are purses. And so the other objects in that donation were pillboxes, there were belts, there were some personal ephemera. And so it's all related to Judith Leiber about things that she's designed, things that she and the collector, sort of shared. And it's a lot of, I wasn't really sure what to expect coming into this, not knowing what, the full scope of the donation was, but it's a lot of really varied, interesting objects, which I love. There's some I feel like I discover, I've been at this over 7 months now, and I discover something new still every time I'm looking at them.
Oh, that's fantastic. I can't wait to see it. This is a great image.
I love this one of
This
her.
is so good. She's like surrounded by handbags.
Exactly. I mean, we could all dream of that, right? Yeah. So my role was created with the express purpose of studying these bags, studying her life, telling the story of Judith Leiber as a Holocaust survivor, as she grew up in Hungary, she immigrated to the United States, and then she had a career of over 4 decades designing purses under her own name. And so the more that I learn about her, the more I become, just elated and overjoyed at this crazy, wonderful story we get to tell. So here's our first preview of some of the bags that have joined our collection, which I'll just let you take in for a minute, because there's there's flowers, there's fish, there's, sort of a round oblong, everything.
How does the telephone bag open?
That is a great question. It actually opens in 2 places. So right under the rotary, you can see there's a little seam, and it opens sort of jewelry box style, I would say. And then the receiver part slides back, and it opens sort of, if you imagine when you cut a banana for a banana split, it opens down the middle, and the chain comes out from the receiver.
That's excellent.
So it's just but looking at it, you would never have any idea. So getting my hand on these objects and seeing how does this one open? What does this one do? Where am I going to find something funky inside this one has been just a joy and a treat.
I was so hoping you would say the receiver did something, because otherwise that's just a gag waiting to happen. You know?
Yeah, what's the point if it's not going to do something?
Exactly. Yeah, that's amazing. And this color array is so beautiful. It's really fantastic.
Yeah, we were lucky to get the professional photography on these objects done in time for this discussion, and I lobbied hard to get the pink ones all together in a photo, because I think it's just so interesting. And something that I am playing with in this is that even though this is an exhibition about one designer, obviously we're limited by the scope of one collector. So how am I able to tell a designer's story with this very specific scope? So it's a fun challenge that I'm getting to sort of wrestle with and play with. And since we're still in the research phase, I'm just finding my way into doing that. And I think it's nice having kind of a personal touch to a collection. You really get the sense that these were objects that were loved by someone. And also, we can use them as a tool to tell a great story.
Yeah, these are gorgeous. These
I
are
know.
so much fun.
I know. I love them. And another fun portion to the exhibition is there will be a fashion component as well. So I study fashion history. That's my one of the things that I love. But our guest services team always tells me, visitors tell me they want to see fashion on display. And I think this is a really awesome opportunity to show people, what was a Lieber carrying woman wearing? What were the fashion trends of the time that this collector was collecting? And, I think there's also some really cool chances to talk about craftsmanship and both in accessories and in fashion, because obviously these are really there's a lot of craftsmanship to talk about here. And so
Yeah.
we can talk about that. We can talk about fashion. I think it'll, be a really exciting.
I have another question. So
Yeah.
the miniature cupcake,
Yes.
is that a keychain?
That's a keychain, but it is based on a full size purse. So, and that's a newer object. I think the Judith Leiber company still sells cupcake minaudières. So if you're interested in splashing out a few dollars and getting a cupcake purse, you certainly could.
Oh, fantastic. These are
Yeah.
awesome.
We jump into a little history.
Yes.
So prior to this project, I have to admit, I didn't know the name Judith Leiber. I was not familiar with her, but upon starting and diving in, I have just come to appreciate her talent, her vision, her drive. So she was born in 1921 in Budapest, Hungary, and she was born to an upper middle class Jewish family. And you can see her at age 5 on the left, and then in the middle, ready to go to the opera as a young woman. She had a sister, Ava, who was 3 years her senior. And Judith was brilliant. She excelled academically, and she planned to pursue studies at King's College in London in chemistry. Her parents were hoping that she would study abroad because there were limited opportunities available to Jews at the time to study and to work. And because she was so brilliant, they figured she would do very well. So she spent a year in London, 1938 into 1939, taking science classes to prepare for her entrance exam alongside other women who were preparing for their science degrees. So you can see her certificate of matriculation there on the right, which is in the Holocaust Memorial Museum's collection. And it certified that she was prepared to take her classes. And in the spring of 1939, after her certification year, she returned home to spend the summer with her family. But as war was declared in September 1939, she was not able to get safely back to London. So she remained in Budapest for the duration of the war. And that was actually when she joined the Handbag Guild in Hungary, because it was one of the only paths available to Jewish job seekers at the time. And aside from its availability to her, she was also inspired to learn to make handbags because her father had often brought her mother purses back from his travels in Europe. And so she really loved the bags and thought it would be a fun, really interesting career. And something that amazed me in learning all of this was she was the first woman accepted into Hungary's Handbag Guild. And she trained all the way up from sweeping floors and mixing glue, all of the above, to apprentice, to journeyman, all the way to a master leather worker. So she learned every process of making a handbag, constructing the frame, skiving and shaping the leather, sewing, finishing, all of that. So she was clearly, not only did she have a brilliant mind for design, but she had the hand skills to go along with it.
Fantastic.
Yeah, which is, incredible.
Incredible.
And so it was through these handbags that in a war-torn Budapest, she was able to find a way not only to survive, but really to begin making a name for herself. So on the left is her certificate, which allowed her freedom of movement in Budapest, which was issued by the Ministry of Home Affairs. And roughly translated, it reads that she and her family are to be protected by the authorities and are free from any other intrusion or interference. They can travel freely from their home to the place of assembly and back. So this is, you can get a feeling of how constricted her movement must have been. She had to carry that everywhere she went. She was subject to, police, soldier inquiry at any time. But it did allow her to go to work and make purses, doing, giving her something to do to survive this miserable time. And she began to sell her creations, mostly to American soldiers after the liberation of Budapest, because they were the ones who had the money to spend on leather purses. And so in doing that, she met an American GI on the street. His name was Gerson Lieber. And she knew immediately from first sight that would be the man she would marry. And he was a little less certain at first. He wasn't able to dream big enough to see that this could become something beautiful, but they quickly fell in love. And her parents did not initially approve, but they saw how in love with each other Judy and Gus were and gave their blessing. So you can see them there after their engagement. And I just love that picture. I think they're so young and hopeful. And they got married February 5th, 1946, and traveled back to America on a ship just before Christmas in 1946. They settled in New York City, and Judith found her way to a job with a handbag manufacturer. And then over the next 16 years, she worked for several companies, including Morris Moskowitz, Curator, and Nettie Rosenstein. She designed purses, but she didn't have control over the process. She was just one cog in the machine. And so she dreamt of being able to, really access her own means of design and her own means of doing it all. And mentioning Nettie Rosenstein, it was during the time that she worked for Nettie that Judith actually designed the purse that Mamie Eisenhower carried to her husband's inauguration, which you can see there in the portrait on the left. So although Judith's name wasn't on the bag, this was the first of many bags that Judith Leiber would design for a First Lady of the United States. And specifically for inaugural events, Mamie Eisenhower, Pat Nixon, Nancy Reagan, Barbara Bush, Hillary Clinton, and Laura Bush all carried Leiber bags. And then Jackie Kennedy, Lady Bird Johnson, and Betty Ford also had Leiber bags, but not to their husbands' inaugurations. And then you can see in this article from Women's Wear Daily from 2005, they called Judith the First Lady's bag lady. And they show, several examples of her bags being carried. And those were, made in leather, made in satin, whatever was, the right bag for the moment. And there were a few notable examples of First Ladies carrying the animal Minaudières too. Barbara Bush was gifted one modeled after her dog Millie, because Judith Leiber loved the dog so much after meeting her. And Hillary Clinton had one of her cat's socks, which I think is so sweet, because you can see the little, even in the picture of her carrying the bag, you can see its little nose, and it's just the attention
That's
to
so sweet.
Just unbelievable. And I love it. I just can't imagine getting a personalized purse after your own pet.
Well, now you can have your pet 3D printed. So
right. You save yourself the money and get a 3D printed, and then just tell people it's a Leiber bag.
Exactly.
So here's one of the beautiful purses joining our collection. There's Judy, hard at work. So in 1963, she lost her job due to changes in the company that she was at. And Judy and Gus decided that it was time for her to start designing the bags that she wanted to make under her own name. And she was afraid, but Gus supported her, and she dedicated herself to this new business. Her first collection was released in May 1963, and she later disavowed it because she said it was an ugly leather and it was overshadowed by the Kennedy assassination. And so she would never stake all of her claim, make all of her bags in just one leather ever again. So the rest of her collections after that first one all had color, texture, shape beyond just one one thing. So the business still exists today. Obviously, Judith Leiber is no longer with us, but the company remains, and they have celebrity and non-celebrity clients worldwide. So she began the company in 1963, and then her first metal bag came in 1967. And she remained owner and head designer until 1993, and she sold the business to Time Products, which is a British company. But she remained the head designer. She wasn't going to let go quite yet. And then she officially retired in 1998 at the age of 77. But even though it was an official retirement, she remained a creative consultant to the company for a few more years. And she designed her final purse for the company in 2004, meaning she spent over 41 years at her own company, plus 2 decades prior to that working for others. So,
Wow, that's
pretty
amazing.
storied career, I would say. So after clearly you can tell she was not one to just sit idly. Here's Humpty Dumpty, who is a beloved purse of mine. I just can't get over. He's sitting so politely. His little feet are crossed.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
And the bow tie actually is the clasp. So he sort of cracks open in the middle, which is too funny. You'll see a picture of that later, but he's just, I can't get enough of it. So Judith was not one to sit idly by, even when she was in her 80s. So after she ceased involvement for the final time with the company, she devoted herself to building up the Leiber Museum in East Hampton, New York, which is dedicated to her purses and to the artwork of her husband, Gus. He was a multimedia artist for all of his life. And so they spent years trawling in-person marketplaces, online, eBay, trying to buy back as many of her original designs as they could, which it's estimated that she designed over 3,500 purses in her career. And the Leiber collection, the Leiber Museum, has over 1,500 purses. So they have a formidable collection, but still more to go, of course.
Wow.
And their work is ongoing in acquiring her designs when they can and displaying her artwork and, well, her work and Gus's artwork. And Judith passed away actually on the same day as her husband Gus in April 2018. She was 97 years old. It was, I think, a true love story. They just couldn't be apart. And so I want to show you a little video. I was lucky enough to take a research trip to the Leiber collection in East Hampton in January. And so here's just a little look at their gallery. And this is just a snippet, but you can get a brief idea of what incredible variety there is.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
And there's paintings on the walls up above. Those are by her husband. And so he did a lot of sort of fashion illustrations and people in movement. And so it's very interesting to see these two design minds hard at work.
So are all of her handbags one-offs, meaning unique, individualized pieces? Or, are there 35,000 Humpty Dumptys?
They are not one-offs, but they were generally limited production because they're very labor intensive to make. So her most popular bag was called the Chatelaine, and the estimate is that was about 3,500 of those were produced, and that's the maximum. So everything from there was produced in smaller quantities. So they're luxury objects. They're not produced en masse. But something that's been interesting to me is that she took, if she had the mold, say for this Humpty Dumpty egg, she would use it, but cover it in crystals in a different way so that it would create something different. And so that was a way that she, was able to innovate with her design without having to take on the immense cost of producing a new cast every single time she wanted something new.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Oh my God, so great.
I know. I just love it. So I have to tell you, one of the most exciting and exhilarating finds that I made here at the Mint Museum is that we actually have a number of her own, Judith Leiber's own clothing items in our collection.
What?
How fortuitous and like crazy is that? So I've been it's going based on our accession dates. She was around 90 years old, and she must have just decided it was time to move along some of her fashion, some of her designer clothes. And she contacted a colleague at the Met who recommended the Mint for a place to donate. And from there, she made 3 separate donations to our collection. And that included designers like Giorgio Armani, Jeffrey Bean, we have a lot of from her, James Galanos, we also have a lot of from her, and Oscar de la Renta, which is what she's wearing here. This ensemble is just, I saw this picture and then I was looking in our collections database. I was like, that jacket looks very familiar to me. And lo and behold, it's that very same jacket. And the ensemble came with 2 skirts, so she's wearing the full length one in that picture, but there's also a knee length one.
Same color.
Same color, same sort of shape, but it just ends at the knee. And this blazer, I have to tell you, it's got all kinds of metallic embroidery on it. It must weigh 12 pounds. It is heavy. It is beautiful. And so as we all know here, we are costume, fashion, textile people. Being able to see the clothes that somebody wore is a very visceral experience. It gives you a real sensation of, this is the size that this person was. This is, I can get an idea of the height that this person may have been. And it really, I think it's going to add such an interesting level to this exhibition that we're able to display not only her designs but her own personal clothing, because how much closer to the designer can you get other than having her brain on display?
Exactly.
And so this one was a special event outfit, this beautiful Oscar de la Renta, but we do actually have what appear to be a lot of her work clothes, suits, skirts, and I think that's very fitting. Clearly this was a woman who spent a grand majority of her life dedicated to her work. And I think it makes an interesting case of, this woman, this is her workwear. This is how she carried herself and presented herself on the factory floor. And she mandated, actually, on her factory floor, everybody had to wear black all the time. So part of the perk of being a Leiber employee while she was in charge was that she bought your uniforms and you didn't get to ask any questions. So, hey, if the boss says, you say, all right.
That's kind of amazing.
I know, I love it. So I'm excited to get some of her clothes on display in this exhibition, because I think it will be just what a lucky addition it will be.
Indeed. Oh my God, that's great.
All right.
Oh, great.
Are you ready to look at some purses?
Let's look at some purses. This is awesome.
So I want to show you, I just want to give some of these bags that I've been working with a little bit of appreciation. So Judith Leiber's most known in the public consciousness for her metal, crystal embellished bags, as we've seen a handful of them. But for the majority of the time that she was at the helm of the business, they did a lot of leather manufacturing. She was trained to work with leather. That was what she really had the skill to do. And so, although the donation to the Mint did consist primarily of metal bags, we do have a few incredible leather bags like the one you're seeing that just provide an example of the quality and the workmanship that were done to create them. And, she was endlessly creative, as you may be starting to learn. And in my research, she was always willing to try out a new material, a different material. I've come across bags that she designed that were made of all kinds of skins and leathers. That's been ostrich, elephant, stingray, toad, and not every material obviously was suitable for production. The toad, I don't think, probably went into mass production, but it just speaks to me to her willingness to try everything. She would give everything a try once, and if it didn't work, that's no problem. She'd come back to it another time, or she'd let it go. And so when she worked with leather, she didn't tend to sketch. She wasn't much of a pencil to paper type of person. She got the leather in her hands, and she saw how it wanted to move, how it wanted to fold around a frame, what it wanted to do, and she let that guide her. So this is a bag that's probably snakeskin, and the leather bags tend to err more sort of fashion over function. But you can see, I mean, we've got a lizard on the clasp. She's not losing her sense of whimsy just because you need to carry more than a lipstick. So I think, she's adding fun to an otherwise subtle bag, which is just my idea of a perfect purse.
And that nice big pearl is amazing.
Exactly. You can't go wrong. A little pearl, a little lizard on your bag. Why not?
And his heart-shaped head. He's so cute.
I know. I love him. This bag, I spend a lot of time looking at this bag because it's so precious. So this is another one of our beautiful leather bags. As you can see, the leather is so rich in color. She was clearly very dedicated to having beautiful skins dyed very expertly. She favored this metallic hardware with semi-precious stones set in. And she did experiment with precious stones, but it was soon decided that it was easier to replace and easier to supply if they use semi-precious stones. So fair play. So this is, again, a functional bag. It's going to hold more than just your lipstick, but you don't have to sacrifice your glamour. And in 1986, she was speaking to the New York Times, and they asked, what's your typical bag? When you're designing, what do you see? And she says, it's generally draped. It's pouchy, soft. It has an elaborate frame with a lot of semi-precious stones in it. It usually has a shoulder strap so that you can drop it in and carry it under your arm. And it comes in all colors of the rainbow, as well as black, white, and bone. So you can see this one hits all the marks.
Yes, check, check, check.
Exactly. You're not missing a single thing on that. And then talking about her leather artistry, this is not a piece that's in our collection, but a piece I saw at the Leiber collection in East Hampton. But I just wanted to, give you an idea. She was working with multiple skins all at the same time. This one is based on a George Braque painting. And you can probably see there's a bunch of different textures there, different colors, different shapes. And that's because there's a bunch of different skins from different animals on this purse. And it takes a lot of skill to be able to get all of those leathers that are coming from different animals, their different thicknesses, to get them to all work together and create the effect that you want with this. And so it's hard to look at for me, it's hard to look at a bag like this and not be struck by just how incredible the craftsmanship is. And then I took the photo on the right when I was at the Leiber collection, and you can see the Braque bag is there in the middle on the right. And then you can probably also spot a few more artist-inspired handbags. The Mondrian in the bottom.
Yeah, the Mondrian in the bottom is really great. That's fantastic. These are amazing. I love the mix of leathers that's going on there and the lovely repetitive shapes.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really beautiful. The sort of inverted S on maybe that's the clasp on the purple and the blue.
Mm-hmm.
Is that like cut through, or is it just incised into the leather?
I think that it is incised into the leather, and it might be stitched over, but I don't remember that for sure. I would have to look closely at my pictures. But yeah, I think it's just she was stitching and piping where it was appropriate, and then when she wanted things to just blend into one another
and just like flat and
she
simple.
made it happen.
Really nice, yeah.
Yeah, and you can see, there's a lot of like Art Deco influence in some of these leather bags. She really loved the Art Deco style, so you see that coming up a lot in the leather bags, but then you also see it in the Minaudières too. And so this is another one joining our collection that is it's beautiful. And again, not only is the design beautiful, but she's added this really fun three-dimensional clasp to it that, just if you needed your purse to be even more interesting, you've got a fun big black pearl on it and this little complimentary shaped clasp.
That's gorgeous.
Isn't it beautiful? It's to die for.
Yeah.
She loved working in a lot of different color languages. There were, obviously I showed you the pink at the beginning, but she took from everywhere to see a bit of everything. So back to our discussion of materials. This is one of the most unbelievable purses joining our collection. This is a real shell. She
Wow.
not limit, so she was experimental with her leathers, with her skins, but she was also experimental when it came to these hard purses. It's a real shell. It's lined in gold leather, and then it has this metal base, which had to be handcraft. Every shell is different, and so every metal base had to be crafted individually. And then you can see right under where it says Vicky is a little line, and that's the hinge where it opens. So of
Oh,
course
wow.
you can still put your things, not very many things, but you can still put your things in there and carry them around. And if you want, there's a chain that drops out. And I like this piece because, as you can see, it has our collector's name on it. It makes it feel all that much more personal. And I love that. I think it's fun, knowing this was a this was somebody's
That's
treasured
amazing.
object, and she liked it so much she wanted her name on it. And so I hope that people, when they come to this exhibition, they're getting an impression. They're learning about Judith Leiber. They're getting an impression of this amazing collector. And I feel like this will be a piece where I can talk about unconventional materials in accessories, in fashion, because, Judith Leiber obviously was willing to try, and there are so many more fashion creators and accessories designers who also were trying unconventional things. So,
Found objects as fashion.
exactly, exactly.
I want to know, was she just walking along the shore one day and came across this shell?
Probably initially she was just truly willing to try anything. And then as they went into production, here's a little view of some press
Mm,
clippings. So she tinkered with these ideas for a long time. She started with the shell purses in 1976, and
wow.
then they're fragile. You have to figure it out. You do the best you can.
Yeah.
And the museum at FIT hosted a exhibition dedicated to Judith Leiber in 1994. And in the publication, Enid Nemby writes, quote, "Although the rhinestone-encrusted evening bags require the most painstaking work as well as the most intensive labor, they are not the most difficult to manufacture. That honor, if such it be, belongs to the bags made of real shells. First, there's the difficulty of finding the shells. Then, because like people, no two shells are alike, the frames have to be made to fit each one individually. Add this to the fact that shells are fragile and almost nothing can be done to toughen them up, and unsurprisingly, the result is that real shell bags are no longer among the Leiber designs. Still, shells were a popular and natural handbag shape. Mrs. Leiber's solution was to design a metal bag, curved and undulating, and although not the real thing, perhaps a cousin. The solution, as well as it works, is not the final one in Mrs. Leiber's book. She's going to try the real thing again, and anyone familiar with her tenacity wouldn't quibble about the odds." So that's a quote from 1994. You can see in this ad from Town and Country in 1998, there's a shell purse again. So
There's a shell
clearly,
pretty good.
her tenacity won out. She found a way to make it happen. And I just love that. She wasn't ever going to take no for an answer from any of these materials. She said, I'm going to find a way. I'm going to make it work.
You will bend to my will, mollusk.
Bend to my will. There's no way around it. You're talking to Judith Leiber here. All right, a
Ah,
few more beauties. I love them. So on the left, you can see that's a cat, and I chose a picture specifically showing it open so that you get a little bit clearer of an idea how these purses open. I've been really amazed handling all these objects is that not only are they well crafted, but they have practicality in mind. And I can hear you perhaps wondering, how practical can a metal box covered in Swarovski crystals be? And that's a fair point. But for the people who wanted to carry these bags, there was the option to do so both in hand, but almost every single bag you can find will have little hinges on the inside which fold out with the chain attached, and then you can still snap the purse shut and carry it on the chain. And I think that's just brilliant. You can hang it from your shoulder without any worry about your stuff spilling out, which is so cool.
That's wonderful. That's really sweet. And of course, you're just carrying a few little things, you
Well,
know.
well, yes, she has this famous quote, and I don't want to get it wrong, but she said, "What more do you need to carry other than $100 in your lipstick? Your husband can just carry the rest of it." And the hundred, if you're going out alone, the $100 will get you home.
Well, I'm just saying this was the days before credit cards, so
Exactly, exactly. What more could you need? I
so
had
let's
a
just
great,
say we should all be taking some cash with us when we're going out in the
exactly,
evening.
exactly. Yes, and no cell phone. You don't need to fit an iPhone in this purse, so no
Right.
problem. I had a great conversation with Anne Stewart, who's the director of the Lieber collection, and she told me actually that Judith developed the adhesive that's used to affix the crystals to the purses, and she called it to ensure that it was stronger than regular jeweler's adhesive and it would be able to withstand, being carried, being used. She was always very unhappy when people told her they just had her bags lined up sitting on a shelf because she wanted people to use them. And so she called this glue her special sauce, and the company still uses it to this day. So even though she didn't get the chance to study chemistry, clearly that knowledge stayed with her. And I
That's
think
amazing. That's
just,
amazing.
just
Did she really call it her special sauce?
according to Anne Stewart, and I don't think she would lie to me, why
Okay.
not call it your special sauce?
Well, that just seems like a term that's like in the vernacular now and
I
whatnot.
know. Well, I know.
You know,
We'd have to get
contemporary
Judy back on
lingo,
the
shall we
line.
say? You know.
I know. I know. I just love it. And it just goes to show me clearly she was thinking about, you know, she could do every step of this process, be it, shaping the leather, stoning the purses. She trained a lot of the craftspeople that she ended up working with because in America, the educations that they received were just not the same as what she had received in Europe. So she trained a lot of people under her own sort of way and gave them these skills, and they stayed with her and with the company for many, many years. And so she could do every step. As the business got busier, obviously she didn't have time to sit on the floor and stone purses, but that she could is pretty
Yeah,
fabulous to me.
that's amazing.
Another cutie pie. I love this seal. I think, the attention to detail on all of these again blows me away. We're getting not only the effect of the ombre crystals, no harsh lines, nothing crazy, but also if you think to turn the bag over, which you might not do because who's turning their purses upside down, you'll see this seal also has his flippers engraved on the bottom of the purse. And it's fun details like that, like the cat you saw in the last slide, he has little paw prints on the bottom. It's just these details that serve no purpose other than just to delight the person who's carrying the bag and delight the friends. And this would be a something that was carved. The metal purses were developed carved into wax molds, and then they were sent and created a metal die was made to cast them. But this would be a detail that was carved into this original wax mold. And so clearly Judith was thinking of everything from this very get-go. She had all of this sort of in her mind. She said, "Oh, we can't forget the flippers on the seal. Heaven forbid."
Heaven forbid. An amuse-de-mole, shall we say.
Right. Exactly. So here's our Humpty Dumpty again. You can see he's been cracked. He's fallen off the wall. He's cracked open. And so something that I've been asking myself is, how do we know? Can we get a concrete date on these things? And the answer is sometimes yes, sometimes no. But, our collector, she was using these bags, so she wasn't keeping a personal diary of purchased on this date, manufactured on this, that wasn't. But something I found really helpful in knowing, at least when these bags were popular, was this great series of advertisements that Judith Leiber collaborated with Peter Rogers on. And they created all these really fun worlds, putting these luxury objects into these sort of real settings. And there's countless ads like this. I had to pick some favorites, but they've got a cat drinking the milk, and they've got snakes in the desert, all kinds of things. And these rich visuals, I just think they're phenomenal.
That's great. These are amazing. These are really amazing.
I know. I love them. And then if a fish isn't quite your style, if you want something that's a little more, maybe not an animal in your hand. She did a lot of really amazing things just with design on the surface. The shape of the bag was kept a lot simpler, but you can see she did this cool geometric pattern. And then the one on the right really makes me think of sort of like a needlepoint or, some sort of like stitched craft, which is very
Yeah,
cool.
exactly. Emulating that like needlepoint bag or that embroidery bag.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, and
really
she loved working, she made we don't have any in our collection, but she loved textile, she used a lot of like Japanese obi fabric and needlepoint and created bags out of that. And those were, two, three, four of a kind, as much fabric as there was, and then that was that. And so she, beyond just leather and metal, again, wasn't limiting herself with material and wasn't limiting herself in design. And so before we wrap up and open for questions, I want to give people just a tiny sneak peek of what's to come at the Mint here in the future in the craft design and fashion world. So we're very excited to bring Future Now virtual sneakers to cutting edge kicks to the Mint this fall. And that originated at the Bada Shoe Museum. And here at the Mint, it's being curated by our brilliant colleague, Rebecca Elliott. And it focuses on futuristic footwear designs, how new technologies, materials, and ideas are transforming footwear today. So if you're in Charlotte this fall, please stop by. And then we were so excited when we learned that CSA's symposium would be in Charlotte next year because
I'm so excited that you guys said yes.
are you kidding? Well, how could we not? I mean, it's how lucky are we? So we will obviously have our permanent collection craft design galleries on view, showing everything from wood to textiles to glass to fiber to metal, all kinds of things. And then at the time the symposium is there, we will have Designing Dynamism, Cuba Textiles from the DR Congo, the Wesley Mancini collection, which showcases an incredible collection of Cuba textiles. And we'll be very excited. Annie Carlano, who will come back on here in a minute, she's curating that. And we're very excited to welcome CSA members and visitors, everyone who wants to see it, to see this and the rest of our collection. And if you do end up in Charlotte in the fall of 2026 or early in 2027, please do come see the Judith Leiber exhibition. I will be very proud of that work and very thrilled to share it with everyone. So thank you all so much. I want to leave you on a favorite collection of mine. We all at the Mint, we love these frogs. I think they might be a staff favorite. But I want to thank you, Leon, for this wonderful conversation and all of our listeners for joining us tonight. So
I'm just going to say, before we dive into questions, it would be remiss of me to not quote my favorite play, A Handbag, as we wrap this up.
Can't go wrong. You
Can't
just can't
go
go
wrong.
wrong. I love it.
So we have a bunch of questions.
All right, I'm ready.
So, okay. So did one person donate the Lieber collection, donate your Lieber connection?
Yes, they all came from one collector.
Can you share the collector's name?
Not at this time. Vicky.
Okay.
Her name is Vicky.
Vicky. Thank you, Vicky. Do you think that written instructions on how to open the bag was provided when the bag was first purchased?
I don't think there were opening instructions. I think that, you could go into the store and handle the object and figure it out, go into her showroom and see things. I think perhaps maybe for the more complex ones, but each bag came with a coin purse, a comb, and a mirror. So not only were you getting your bag, but you had all your essentials inside, free of charge.
Okay, that's amazing. Does the Handbag Guild still exist? Are you aware of?
In Hungary, I'm not completely sure. I think that certainly there's probably artisans and leather workers who have evolved, but I don't think it exists in the same way that we might think of a guild, because the guild that she joined, I think, sort of was a last remaining hold on of the sort of medieval guild system. And so, after the war ended and after some of these artisans who had taught, the generation that was Judy's generation, after the war, I think it's hard to say that they would have stuck around, because especially if a lot of these craftspeople were Jewish, a very high number of Jews were from Hungary, from Budapest, were lost during the war, and so I don't think the guild exists as we once imagined it had, but I'm sure there are still artisans who can work leather.
And possibly archives.
Right.
There's such a difference when Leiber changed her designs earlier. Where there was leather set over metal and then stone set directly onto the metal.
So this is a good comparison. The geometric shape bag, that's stones directly on metal. The needlepoint effect bag, that's stones on leather on metal. And so that one almost has a bit of a plush feel when you pick it up, which is it threw me off at first. I was like, why is this one so soft?
And so black is the black edges of that one. Is that
still
the
crystals?
Nope, still crystals, completely covered. It's just squishy.
And even on sort of the edge seam, you can see there's that little sort of band. That's still crystals as well.
Yeah. How does the lizard bag open, and what's the lining?
That's a good question. So the pearl part pushes in. It's just a latch. It pushes in and it opens like that. And there's a strap, a matching green leather strap that folds out. You can almost see right behind that lizard's back leg. There's a little gold.
Oh, yes.
Hinge, and that's where the strap would fold out.
Strap pops up, yeah. How involved was Swarovski in her designs?
That's a good question. She began using Swarovski crystals completely of her own volition, and did, when in the 90s, Swarovski really wanted to sort of capitalize on the makers that were using their product. And so they approached her and asked if she wanted to sort of collaborate in an official capacity, but she said no, because she felt that her brand name was sufficient enough without their name also attached. So they, for official reasons, started calling them Austrian crystals, but they are and have always been Swarovski crystals. And one really fun fact that I learned was Anne Stewart, who's the director of the Leiber collection, told me Swarovski used to manufacture a sort of a deep, like a ox blood red crystal specifically for Judith Leiber, and they no longer do. So that is a rare find if you can.
Ooh, there you go. If you find the red one. The shell bags seem particularly akin to the objet de vertu, dating back to the Renaissance in European collections, with shells made into chalices or boxes. Might she have seen some of these in Hungary?
I think you're absolutely right. I think she was well studied. She was well read. She loved museums. She loved operas. And so I have no doubt in my mind that she would have seen that. I mean, she took a lot of things and turned them very literally. She took them from object to purse. So there's this, I saw the object at the Leiber Museum. It's a Chinese hand warmer, and so it's sort of small, and you would put a few coals in the top, and she turned that, like, almost line for line into a handbag. And so she went to antique fairs and museums and had a very wide range of incredible inspirations and recreations and things that she made. So I have no doubt she would have seen shell chalices.
Are there unique challenges or opportunities to showcasing fashion in Charlotte?
There are challenges of protecting the objects from the public without interfering into the aesthetic. So the platform, if it's, my preference is a platform that's very wide as opposed to stanchions. The challenge is that although there was a great textile industry here in North Carolina and South Carolina, it's quite diminished. There are a few successful companies. So that's a challenge, is that the sponsorship, the funding for what we do is not as robust as it could be from that sector. The positive is this Cuba textile and fashion, actually, because there are 7 skirts that belonged to aristocratic women, Bouchon group. those textiles were given to us by one of the leading textile designers in North Carolina who lives in Charlotte. And some of the textiles that he had designed for various collections that were inspired by Kuba textiles were woven in Bursa, Turkey. And that has created a global awareness of our collection. So there are always challenges and the positive opportunities. But Fashion at the Mint has extraordinary support since 1972. So
That's amazing.
I want to say thank you again to CSA,
Mm-hmm.
to Leon and Kristen and everyone behind the scenes, and all of the people who've given up their evening to listen to Bridget. Just thank you all for your interest and for supporting CSA.
Thank you very much. And Bridget and Annie, thank you both so much for being here tonight. It's wonderful. Please follow the Costume Society of America on Facebook and Instagram to make sure you hear about our upcoming episodes of D&D and Conversations on Dress. Lastly, if you enjoyed tonight's content, we implore you to make a small or very large donation to keep this content free for all. Good night.
Thanks, everyone.